Please welcome Viggo Mortensen.
Thank you. Thank you for that nice welcome. Thank you. Can I just say something to them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. I know you've probably been in here a long time waiting, and we were worried we weren't going to make it. It was sad, and I thought, you know, my friends and I, we're too stubborn. We're going to get there. I mean, the one time I'm actually going to get a very important award, not just be nominated. The forces of nature are not gonna keep us away. So I'm very glad to be here, and thank you for the very warm reception, and thank you for doing this. I thought it was just special for Green Book, but I realize you do this always. But I have to say that Pete was he was the very first person in terms of journalists that I know of that grasped what Pete Farrelly had accomplished. The amazing, how he turned everybody's expectations of him, I think, on their head. I mean, he saw that early on, very early on, and really appreciate that. So.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I got a chance to see this movie, and they just wanted my opinion, and I said, "What, are you crazy? This movie's a smash hit. People are going to so relate to it," and we're gonna talk about that later as we talk about your whole career. I mentioned the little incident watching the soccer match on the Q&A. And you are a big soccer fan, though. You are, and but you have. When I was talking to you once before, you said you have a reason. You go beyond that. It's just a sport. Yeah.
Well, I find it dramatic. I really, my favorite thing about it. I mean, obviously, I love great players and watching them play, even on teams that aren't my favorite team. Respect where it's due, I think. But I like seeing how people behave when things go well and when things go badly. How do people behave when they win? How do people behave when they lose? That's inherently dramatic to me. How do you overcome a deficit? And if you don't, are you a good loser? Or are you a good winner? Basically, and I find that dramatically interesting about soccer, especially because so many people are into that sport around the world. So there's so much pressure on the best players and the best teams. And when they lose, they don't always handle it very well. And when they win, they sometimes don't handle it very well. So I like to watch that. And I like to see what they do and think, what would I do? In the same sense that when I watch a movie, I get sucked in. If there's an obstacle, there's something that's dramatically, inherently interesting about the story, Okay, an unusual thing happens in this person's life. How are they going to handle it? Are they going to behave badly, or are they going to be honorable? Who knows? So we live through those characters, and I wish I could do what those guys do on the field, but I live through them, and I like to see how they behave.
It's the perfect attitude to have during award season, too, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would challenge anybody to do this better than me. I've had practice, and I think I've mastered it.
Well, everything has come to you. All these nominations and everything are so well-deserved over the years and things. I wonder, when you look at that reel there and you see, your life pass, your cinematic life pass before you, what do you think?
Well, some of it's embarrassing, some of it makes me laugh, and what I'm seeing, it'd be like if you're looking at a photo album at home, family pictures, you see a picture of yourself as a kid or with your siblings or your family or someone you're probably thinking about, 90% of what you're thinking about is outside of that photograph. That day, circumstances surrounding that person's no longer here, or, we don't get along anymore, or whatever. There's a million things, anything but the actual image, and that's kind of when I see scenes from movies that I did years ago, I remember what it was like shooting that day, the temperature, what the vibe was on the set, what the relationship with the director was, with the other actors, what was going on in my life at the time. I look at it that way. It's not just I'm not evaluating, is that a good clip, or does that character look right? Although sometimes I see something that feels to me like a glaring error, or wish I could do it over again, but that's 20 years ago. I can't, so don't look that way anymore.
It's amazing, that list that I read on Wikipedia of all the things you do. You really are a man for all seasons. This is one of your CDs. It's called 17 Odd Songs, Viggo Mortensen. I love it. Thank you for sending it to me. One day big box arrived. It had about 14 books and an album. Remember those? Godzilla Sleeps Alone, which I love that title, by the way. But
it's our latest offering. Buckethead, myself, my son Henry, and a couple other friends.
But Percival Press, I think Lord of the Rings enabled you to buy your own company and put out this stuff, and it's really fascinating. And you're giving not just your stuff, but a lot of other writers and different artists an opportunity to be published here.
Yeah, people that I'll put out something once in a while just to keep costs down, because when you're putting out artists that aren't that well known, or poets that aren't very well known, it doesn't always pay for itself, certainly not right away, especially if you're doing, well-made, well-designed editions, and, relatively small print runs. So we just balance it that way. But the idea is, I founded it in 2002, and the idea was much in the same way as if you read a book that you really like, you'll give it to a friend. You say, hey, you can have this book, or you lend it to them. Or a movie you see and you recommend it to somebody. It's the same idea. So I thought, well, there's artists that I like, and I'd like to share them with people. It's basically that. People whose work might not otherwise be published, or not published in the way they would like it to be,
Some amazing stuff. There was one poem about a cat named Bob. It was just like unbelievable. I was crying at the end of it. It's extraordinary.
Scott Weinberg?
Yeah, really good.
Great poet, Scott Weinberg. Great California poet. If you don't know Scott Weinberg, you can look on percivalpress.com, or you can find him other places. Great poet. He's read here in Santa Barbara, and in the old days he would come by himself or read with the Karma Bums, and maybe some of you know of them. Great poets, all of them.
Cool stuff. Now, we are here to celebrate the part of your career that is movies, and I'm just curious. I know you lived in a lot of places, grew up in a lot of places, born in New York, but, Denmark and Argentina and different things. At what point did you decide you were going to be an actor? How did that go off in your head that that's what you wanted to do?
Relatively late. Probably when I was 21, 22, I just sort of made a transition. At the time, I was seeing a lot of movies that I'd never heard of, because I started going to, revival movie houses where you'll have 2 new shows every day, and they might be pictures that are 50 years old or 20 years old. You might see Ozu movie, or Brisson, or Dreyer, or Ingmar Bergman, and I just was educating myself, and in the course of it, I started looking at certain spellbinding performances, or performances that made me, I don't know, they just transported me, and I went from just watching as an audience member, saying, you walk out afterwards and you say to yourself, yeah, that was good, or I love that scene, or that actress did this, or something. And I just wondered what the trick was. How do these actors make me feel that that's so real, to the point sometimes where when the lights come up at the end of the movie, you're surprised that you're in a movie theater, like, wow. And you're literally crying sometimes. And how do they do that? What's the trick? Well, what I've learned in the 30-some years since then is it's not just them. It's obviously the other actors. It's first and foremost, it's the screenplay, and it's the director, and it's how it's lit, how it's shot, how it's edited, it's so on and so on. It's a truly collective, art form, as we know. But it was first, I wanted to try acting, because it was, these people are doing some kind of magic trick, and I was curious as to, whether I could learn what that was, and I'm still trying to figure it
out. Well, your first movie I mentioned was Witness, right? First time you were...
First one I wasn't cut out of.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask you that, because you were actually cut out of one of my all-time favorite movies, Woody Allen's Purple Rose of Cairo,
Good
which
movie.
I love that film, talking about film and things. And why would Woody cut you out of that?
Well, I think, in fairness, I don't think it was just me. And in his career, I think almost all his movies, he tends to shoot a lot of stuff that he then either discards or reshoots. And there are a lot of actors, not just me, that have fallen by the wayside in Woody's cutting room. The problem was that I was just starting, and I had actual words. I had a speaking part, and one small scene. And I told my whole family that it was coming out that Friday and so forth, and they went, and no, not there, not in the credits, nothing. Of course, normally directors, some do, but not all of them tell the actors, even principal actors sometimes, that their scenes have been almost all cut out or completely. But I had basically a very small part, so there was no reason for Woody Allen to get on the phone and say, hey, you're not going to be in the movie, sorry. So they went, and they didn't see me in the movie, and they said, what's going on? And then it happened again with Jonathan Demme's Swing Shift. And after that one, my mom said, look, I don't know what you're doing in New York City. I hear there's a crack epidemic. This was like early 80s. I said, I'm not on crack. I was in the movie. I have some still photos to prove it. But it's a long process. In looking back, everybody's life seems like chaos, and probably is. But after time, after some decades, you look back, and there seems to be some kind of order to your life, right? And I would say that I was lucky that I did lots of small parts, plays, TV, movies, and many hundreds of auditions where you get close, you don't get the part, but you're practicing. You're practicing all the time, and you're practicing working with different people each time. And you're learning what's probably the two most important things, I think, for an actor, which is to be flexible, to deal with all kinds of personalities and requirements and obstacles, and to listen, to pay attention. Because the only way you're going to be flexible really is like, well, what's coming my way now? I can't do the same thing every time. You can be very stubborn, and maybe you'll have a career eventually, or maybe you'll get really lucky and have a career for a while, but you're not going to really, for me anyway, I wasn't going to be able to do what I'd seen on screen, what made me want to try it, which is, how are they doing that? That doesn't seem like them at all. How does that happen? How do they make me feel that's real? And that's by being flexible and challenging yourself, and most importantly, allowing other people to challenge you to do something better beyond what you thought you could.
Well, now I have proof that he finally did get in movies, because we have a bunch of clips we're going to show. And first up, we're going to show a scene from G.I. Jane. And then we're going to jump a few years ahead and take a look at still one of the best movies I've seen, A History of Violence as well. So let's take a look at these two clips, then we'll talk about it.